Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome viewers to another episode of Pathways to Prosperity. And tonight we hope that you will find our content extremely meaningful to you. I believe that it would be something of extreme importance that all of us need to know the details about. And we're discussing the topic of zakah, specifically how to calculate your zakah. And maybe just to recap, zakah is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. And our deen is based, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Buniya al-Islamu ala khamsin. Islam is built upon 5 things. One of these 5 things is zakah. And it is also known as the sister pillar to salah. Because if you look at Quran, zakah is mentioned nearly 30 times. And almost every time that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to us, establish salah, aqimis salah, we will see that after this command, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will command us wa ita az-zakah, to fulfill the obligation of zakah. So zakah is the sister pillar to Islam. Islam is built on one of the pillars being zakah. There's an interesting verse in the Quran that I also wanted to bring to our attention. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, وَالَّذِينَ فِي أَمْوَالِهِمْ حَقٌّ مَعْلُومٌ لِلسَّائِلِ وَالْمَحْرُومِ. Look at the words that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. He says that, and those within whose wealth is a known right, the poor and the destitute. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that the poor and the destitute actually have a right over our wealth. And zakah is that institution, one of the institutions through which we ensure that the poor and destitute get their rights, where we fulfill their rights of sharing our wealth with them. Now, the reason why we're doing this episode also is because personally, I've spoken to many people, obviously clients, family, friends, associates, people that I know, or general people that will just come up to us and say, please, can you just confirm whether my zakah calculation is correct? How do I calculate my zakah? At the extreme of it, I even engaged with some people who are living in a 5 million rand house and own 2 million rand worth of cars by my estimate, and they lay claim to the fact that they can receive zakah. So at the extreme of it, you have people that calculate their zakah so erroneously that they actually feel they are zakatable, even though they have nearly 7 million, 8 million rand worth of assets. So the first thing we must do is we must explain what is nisab. Nisab is the minimum value of wealth that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has put forward to us as to whether you must pay zakah or not. So if you from your wealth do not have this minimum value, then the obligation of zakah is not upon you. What is the calculation of nisab? The calculation of nisab, we have 2 primary calculations. The first is if you have 3 ounces of gold, or equal to roughly about 87.48 grams of gold. If you own this or the equivalent of this value in cash or other other assets of gold or store value assets for 1 year, then you are entitled and obliged to pay your zakah. And if you were to calculate it in silver, it would be 21 ounces of silver or 612.36 grams of silver. So if you have this amount in wealth, you have to pay zakah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then says that your zakah is then fard upon you and you have to calculate your zakah. Now, how do you calculate your zakah? And I have seen many people make big errors in calculating their zakah. The first thing that you need to do is you need to calculate everything that you own in terms of zakatable assets. So the first thing you can do, the easiest one, is you take all of your cash and cash equivalents. So physical cash in terms of notes, cash in the bank, savings accounts, check accounts, onshore, offshore, all currencies. So remember, zakah is not a tax like you pay tax to SARS and you only worry about your tax vicinity of South Africa. No. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Lord of all of the worlds. So your zakah is due on your worldwide assets. So you look at all of your assets across the entire world. Then you look at all of the gold and silver. You then have debts that are owed to you. So people that owe you money, you add this because this is an asset. You then calculate all of your other types of assets in terms of unit trusts, voluntary pension funds, shares, equities that you may own in unlisted companies. If you are a business owner, you then must add the inventory of your business, so the stock value as at the date of your calculation. Your business debtors, if there are any business clients that owe you money, then other business assets that you may have that are there for sale. So it may not be in the form of trading stock, but you may have acquired other forms of assets for resale. And remember, Islam does not separate juristic entity from natural person. If you are the sole owner of your business as well, then technically speaking, your zakat calculation is across your business and your personal estate. Then property. Many people make a mistake when it comes to property. If your primary residence is not a zakatable asset, so you don't calculate that. But if you own another property, if that property is solely as an investment for you to receive passive income through the rent, then you do not calculate the total value of the property, but you take the value of the rental income due to you for that month. So let's say you're calculating your zakat on the 1st of Muharram, and the 1st of Muharram is in January, hypothetically speaking. Then what is the rental due to you for the month of January? That is your zakatable asset calculation that comes in as the asset. But if you own a property and that property is on the market for sale, and you will be using the proceeds of that sale to increase your wealth, meaning you're selling that property at a profit, it's a trading stock item then. It's as though you're buying and selling a commodity. So then if that property is being used to buy and sell, to be bought and sold, then the full value of that property is then going to be included as a zakatable asset. Now this is important because if it's, let's just use an example. If it's a 1 million rand property, if you're using that property to buy and sell for margin, your zakatable asset is 1 million rand. But if you're using that property just for the rental income, your zakatable asset may only be 10,000 rand. So there is a big difference in terms of the actual value. And this is why it's so important to understand how to calculate your zakat. Once you've calculated your zakatable assets that fall into the category of being zakatable, you then need to deduct what is known as, in accounting terminology, your current liabilities, not total liabilities. And this is very important. What I have seen many people do is they deduct their total liabilities. Now, why is this such a big difference? Let's use a simple example. Let's say you come to your total assets at 5 million rand as an example, and you have a bond on your property, your investment property, at 5 million rand, or you have a bond on your primary property at 2 million rand. What will you do if you take your total liabilities? You will deduct the total bond outstanding. Now that could be 2 million rand, 5 million rand, 1 million rand, an exorbitant value. But a current liability in technical accounting terms essentially means what is due by you only for that month of calculation. So again, let's say you're calculating it on the 1st of Muharram and it equals the calendar month of January. What is your bond payment for that month, or your rent payment for that month? What is your, if you've got credit cards, what is your credit card payments for that month? What is your grocery bill, your lights and water bill, your school fees bill? Not everything due, not the total value that's due, but only the payments due for that particular month. Now, why is it such a big difference? If you take your total liabilities, that could run into hundreds of thousands or millions. And if you only got 5 million rand of zakatable assets, but your total liabilities is 7 million, you'll never pay zakah. But if you have your current liabilities calculated, it definitely will ensure that you are zakatable by the correct calculation. So let's take an example. If you've got 1 million rand in zakatable assets and your payments due for that month is only 10,000 rand, then you come through with a zakatable asset of 900,000 rand. So you don't deduct your bond, because let's say you got a bond of 1 million rand. If you got assets of 1 million and your bond is 1 million rand, you got zero, then you don't pay zakat. This is not how the zakat calculation works. So you deduct only payments due for that month. You come out with a zakatable asset of 900,000 rand. You then have to determine whether this value, once you've taken the assets, less current liabilities, you then have your zakatable asset, the asset value against which zakah needs to be paid. This value needs to be higher than the nisab. So if this value is higher than the value of 21 ounces of silver or 3 ounces of gold, and its rand value equivalent or whatever currency calculation you're using, if your zakatable asset is higher than this and you've had this value for longer than 1 year, you pay zakat on it. So let's say that you now own this for 900,000 rand for a year. You then take 2.5% and multiply it against 900,000, and you get a value of 22,500. Now this is the value of zakah that you have to pay. This is your obligation. You have to take 22,500 rand and pay it to eligible recipients of zakah. Now let's come to the last part. There are two main considerations when paying. The first is the date. If you are calculating your zakah on the 1st of Muharram, as an example, and let's say you've come out with this calculation of 22,500, you have until the last day of Dhul Hijjah of that year to pay your zakah. So zakah must be distributed and paid within a calendar year. If you give it over to an administrator of zakah or an organization that is responsible for the distribution of zakah, they have processes in place to ensure that if you give it to them on a particular day, within 1 year of them receiving it, it's distributed. And importantly, this is a very important thing, for as long as your zakah is not discharged, it is a liability against your estate. You have to declare it to your executors in your will. Because what will happen is, let's say for example, you're owing this zakah of 22,500 and you've got assets in your estate of 1 million rand. When you die, the executor of your will first have to discharge your fard obligations, because zakah is fard. So 22,500 must be declared, and you need to in some way or form keep a running calculation of this if you're not discharging your zakah all at once. Once you've processed this and you've got this understanding that, okay, my zakah is due, it's 22,500, you then have to give it to somebody that is eligible to receive zakah. Not anybody can just receive zakah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put forward the categories of recipients of zakah. The first is they must be Muslim. The second is it must go to the poor and needy. The administrators of zakah, for bringing hearts together. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses these words in the Quran that the funds of zakah may be used to bridge a gap between in the hearts of people that will bring them closer towards Islam. Then to free a slave. Then who are debt ridden, al-gharimeen. Now this is a very important thing. Somebody that is debt ridden is not the same as somebody who has debt and is paying the debt. I can wake up one morning and say, oh, I'm debt ridden because I have a home loan and I have a car finance and I have a credit card and I took interest bearing loans by the banks and I have personal debt, but I'm managing. I earn well, I pay my loans off, I still have money to survive and pay for all of my living expenses and I'm living comfortably. This person is not al-gharimin. Al-gharimin, the debt-ridden person, is somebody that in technical terms, in financial technical terms, what we would call somebody that is in a debt spiral, or somebody that is in such extreme debt that it now becomes financially untenable for that person to actually conduct a life, and they have no ability to even make their living expenses because of all of the debt payments that they need. So it's very important. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses this word al-gharimin. It is somebody that is in an extreme case of debt, completely in a debt spiral. Not somebody that just has high levels of debt, but has equally high levels of income and managing this, and is actually also possesses assets and actually is needs to pay zakah, and they are not somebody that is eligible to receive zakah. The last two is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, whoever is fi sabilillah, those people that are engaged in the work of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the da'is, those people that are continuously striving, the mujahideen, they are striving in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are definitions of who fall within the category and definition of fi sabilillah. And the last is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, for the wayfarer, the traveler who does not have means to travel on their journey or to complete their journey, or is stuck in the middle of their journey, or needs some assistance to complete their journey. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then allows zakat to be used for this person. So this is very important. Generally, it has become culture for us to give our zakah over to organizations, and these organizations have this filtration process. They analyze whether the person is eligible for zakah, and then they distribute it to them. But if you are taking it upon yourself to distribute the zakah to people directly, then it's important to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set forward the recipients of zakah, and you need to ensure that the person who is receiving the zakah is actually eligible to receive zakah. So I hope that this show has resonated with you, our viewers. I hope that we have provided something of meaning to you. We covered the three main things when it comes to zakah: how to calculate nisab, whether you are eligible to pay zakah or not. The second is, how do you calculate your income or the assets of the zakah calculation? How do you calculate the current liability section of the zakah calculation? You then take this as your zakatable asset against the value of nisab. You then apply the 2.5%, and then we covered how do you make the payment and to whom you make the payment. We make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He makes all of us of those who pay zakah. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, the hand that gives is better than the hand that receives. So may all of us be in the category of the hand that gives, inshallah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to fulfill this important pillar of Islam correctly, inshallah. Until next time, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.